It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutch. I'm your host, Mains, and my colleague, a man who would never have to have a homework clause in his contract, is Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
I never did homework. Never saw the need. I just, I was confident enough in my ability to do it on the night, so I'm with Kyler on this.
Would you do 4 hours of homework a night for $100 million guaranteed, though?
I might push my principles out that way to do a little bit of work for $160 million, yes. This whole thing, by the way, this is an owner, and it must be the owner, doesn't want to pay this man, feels he has to pay him, but wants to make damn sure that he knows that he's not happy about doing it. Only be.
That's a cool story, but you've already paid him. And are we suggesting that at the end of the year, if he's averaged 3 hours and 30 minutes, that they're going to void his contract if they go 7-10?
I think what you are forgetting is that this is a franchise that has spent the best part of the last century finding ways to be a laughingstock. So I think this would be a novel way of continuing the trend.
I like the fact that they've done it under the guise of multiple names as well. Like, Phoenix, Arizona, St. Louis. They've done Chicago. They've done it in all these and sucked in every one of them.
That is incredibly impressive because most people, most teams, when they move somewhere new, it's to get a fresh start, to revitalise and kick off a brave new era, and they've been shite wherever they've played.
I miss them in the NFC East. Yes, that's right. The Arizona Cardinals used to be in the 5-team NFC East. Epic.
The East didn't. Let's be honest. The East never made sense when it's got Philly, New York, Washington. Okay, Dallas. Okay, we're pushing this a bit, and then the Arizona Cardinals.
Well, they were
East
St.
of
Louis.
What exactly here?
Well, they were St. Louis then, which again is a Midwest country that doesn't make any Midwest town. Sorry, it doesn't really make any sense. But imagine that we're talking then the Buddy Ryan, Bill Parcells, Jerry Jones, Joe Gibbs, dude who coaches the St. Louis Cardinals and gets beat 8 times a year by the rest of the NFC East.
Pretty
Epic
much
stuff. This week we are in the AFC North previewing what can be a pretty interesting division with a lot of teams, with a lot of questions to answer, and I believe a couple of really good teams. Before that though, Neil's going to talk us through some players, 5 in fact, who he has a fear of drafting. Not like, some kind of superstition sense, but he believes that these are players you should avoid for this fantasy year, and we'll give you the reason why. And based on that, Neil, let's get on with it with the 5 players you fear to draft. So what I asked for Neil, we've done top 10s, and what I asked is there a list of players who you will be avoiding in drafts, to give people a kind of situation and question around whether they should think twice before drafting these players. And Neil has given us 5. We'll go through each one. We'll probably ask Neil a reason why, and then does this fear of that player affect anybody else on that roster? The first person we'll go to is number 1, Neil, was Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, I just worry that excuse me, Ezekiel Elliott is running the risk of losing all the fun things about being the running lead back on a prolific offense, in the sense that I don't think he's going to catch many passes. He'll probably still get wheeled out there in short yardage and goal line situations, but over the last few years, most of his good work has come through volume, not efficiency. So if you then limit his work, which I think they're going to have to do eventually, well, you say this, a reasonable coach with a certain degree of job security might like to go to his owner and say, look, this guy that you love, that you paid all this money to, we're taking him off the field. But that would, of course, imply that that coach thought he was still going to have a job this time next year, which he won't. But I still think that the Cowboys are going to find themselves in a situation where they have to give Tony Pollard more of the ball. And I just think that given his current ADP, which is around running back 15 or 16, according to the ESPN leagues, Zeke is just too risky if we're just banking on hoping he'll find the end zone every week. So the players going around him in the draft, I'd much rather take, as they're not many running backs, but I just feel that the wide receivers going in that area have got much more upside.
Where do you stand on Tony Pollard then? Would you suggest drafting him, or would you just avoid Cowboys running backs as a whole because of the amount of touches that Zeke will get, even though we're concerned about the overarching touches?
I think I feel more comfortable taking Pollard at his ADP than I do Zeke at his. Of course, as we get closer to the summer and this drumbeat continues to rise, then the chance Pollard's ADP may rise himself. And while he is probably going to give us more yards per touch than Zeke, we are going to run into the situation that we're overpaying for what is still a player in a committee. So if his ADP was to remain as it is now, I would feel comfortable taking him. But as it continues to rise, I think I'll find myself having less and less of him on my rosters.
Next person, Neil, someone we talked about recently in the tight end top 10, that's George Kittle.
I think an awful lot of fantasy analysis is you have to tell yourself a story of if everything goes right for this player. And the problem that we have with George Kittle is that if everything goes right for George Kittle, the 49ers are going to be very good this year. They're going to run the ball an awful lot. They're going to take passes out of the air game, and they're just going to rely on Kittle to run block, which he loves doing. So the blue sky scenario for George Kittle is he's not going to see 100-odd targets. He's not going to catch, 60, 70, 80 balls. He's not going to flirt with double-digit touchdowns. So while I do think George Kittle is one of the best tight ends in the NFL, this does not mean I think he's one of the best fantasy tight ends in the NFL. I also think there's a very good chance that Trey Lance has a better chemistry with Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel than he will with Kittle. Of course, it could all go wrong. I mean, Ayuk and Samuel have both missed time, but so's Kittle. So I just think that, as we know, unless you get one of the two, maybe three top tight ends in fantasy, then the rest of them, it's pretty much of a wash. And I can just see myself looking at Kittle and saying, you're great, you stayed healthy, you didn't catch any passes.
I fear all San Francisco 49ers in a fantasy sense, because the Shanahanigans just can go many different ways. That Kittle will play a lot, so I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there'll be another tight end on the roster who you're going to pick ahead of him. But then I'm not 100% sure who I actually go for on this roster, unless I'm going possibly taking a flyer on Trey Lance.
Sounds reasonable.
Next one, Neil, one of my favourites over the years, and that's Adam Thielen.
Yeah, Adam Thielen's efficiency has been dropping. He's gone 3 years since he last played a full season. He's gone 3 years since he last went over 1,000 yards. He does have he's had a happy knack of scoring touchdowns of late, and he's got 24 in the last 2 seasons, which is abnormally high rate for someone with odd usage. I don't think it's going to continue. I think the Vikings are going to be in a position where this passing game is going to go through Justin Jefferson. Thielen is at best the second option. I think Irv Smith is going to be a factor this year, now that he seems to be healthy. But I just don't think we can continue to bank on Thielen going out and scoring a touchdown a week. So given his ADP, which is currently wide receiver, I think 36, I think you're pretty much, if you're taking him there, that could be where he finishes. So I don't see a huge amount of upside in that selection.
It's one of them. Adam Thielen's one of those guys who it's tough to let go, right? He's won you or got you involved in many fantasy playoffs over the last 5 or so years, so to let him go. But as you said, the Justin Jefferson thing is starting to become a thing. Next one, Neil, Ryan Tannehill.
The Titans' offense scares me. Tannehill has always chipped in with his fancy value because of his rushing. But I just think we saw last season that an awful lot of his rushing comes on, RPOs, play action, zone reads and whatnot. If Derrick Henry isn't running the ball effectively, no team on this earth respects the play action game. So they just tee off on Tannehill, and that's where you get what happened in the playoffs against the Bengals. So I worry about the offense. I worry that they may be forced to pass the ball more often, but when we've seen Tannehill have to take to the air constantly, his efficiency does not sustain. So he's only going at the moment at like tight end 23, and once we get into that, I don't think we need to be drafting these people and rostering them every week when there's a good chance we can probably take to the stream. So I think we had a good run with Tannehill. I just don't think he's going to continue it this year.
Does that make every pass catcher on the Tennessee Titans buyer beware / avoid?
Well, yeah, I suppose it has to, because there's no clear-cut number one. It's a very ambiguous situation. You've got potentially the best wide receiver in terms of talent is Treylon Burks, but he's still a rookie. We know that this is not a coach who historically throws an awful lot of his rookies. Robert Woods is the savvy veteran. He's coming off an ACL. They've got no real tight end of consequence. Bless you, Austin Hooper. I know you've given me many column inches over the years, but you are what you are at this stage. Mm-hmm. Anthony Ferguson was great for those 3 weeks before the Titans traded for Julio Jones last year. So I just think that from a passing game, you're not getting a wide receiver one out of this lot. There's no A.J. Brown emerging for me. So there's no real upside to drafting any of these pass catchers.
Final name, Neil, and it's not really a name. We've cheated a little bit. It's the Houston Texans outside of Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, why bother? Brandon Cooks is going to give you what he gives you. Where he's going, he represents excellent value, especially if he can find the end zone a bit. There's no one else. Don't give me this Brevin Jordan, Pharaoh Cooper, Nico Collins. Obviously, John Mechie might have fallen into this list, but obviously he won't be playing in 2022. He's been diagnosed with, I'm told, a curable form of leukemia. Mm-hmm. So obviously we hope he gets back to health relatively quickly. But from a fantasy point of view, it's Brandon Cooks on this team and no one else. So why would you bother? Don't try and tell yourself a story that Brevin Jordan could be the man. If he does emerge as a fantasy tight end one this season, I'm happy to say I missed him.
Where do you stand on Davis Mills, Neil?
Davis Mills was the second best rookie quarterback last year.
Agreed.
It's a low bar.
Also agreed.
Yeah, it's a bit like saying the best singer in One Direction. Sounds impressive, but ultimately, who gives a shit?
Well, a lot of 15-year-old girls are going to come after us now, but yeah, carry on.
Yeah, big part of our listening demographic. I think he's going to get a chance to show that he can be a viable starting quarterback, not a franchise quarterback maybe, but I don't know. I don't think this team's going to be very good. I think they have question marks all across the roster, especially on the defense. And ultimately, we know that when Josh McCown fulfills his destiny and becomes head coach in 2023, they're probably going to have another quarterback there anyway.
Awesome. Let us move on now and start talking about the bulk of the show, and that being the AFC North. Neil, AFC North preview. AFC North's schedule this season is the AFC East, the NFC South, one AFC West, one AFC South, and an NFC East team. Let's start, in alpha order, with the Baltimore Ravens. Biggest off-season headline is that Lamar's contract, and it's still not being signed. The big question...
I ask the questions.
If the Ravens are healthy, are they in the AFC elite?
The Ravens are one of those teams that know what they want to do, generally. They stick to their principles, and they execute at a very high level. I think they think that they are an excellent running team and can lean on a defense that has playmakers at most levels. They are building their team to do this and to be efficient when passing the ball. The question is, we've seen them piss through the regular season. We've seen them get to the playoffs. We've seen them look good and then fall away because of all injuries. The problem with all this, in all these various guises, they've won one playoff game with Lamar Jackson as a quarterback. They have to show that they can win in January, because we've seen they can win enough to get to January by various means.
Mm-hmm.
The number one seed or by blagging the way in. Regardless, get there, make plays, win games. I'm not putting this all on Jackson. This all goes on the players around him and the coaching staff to put them in the best position. But at least I believe the Ravens are one of a handful of teams who are comfortable in their own skin and know what they do well.
I look at the Baltimore Ravens, and if they have all their players available, who they should have available, this is a top 4 AFC team. Does that mean that they are going to win a Super Bowl or multiple playoff games? No, I don't think it necessarily does. But they will be in the conversation and in the question. I think they're probably favourites to win this division, based on just a little bit of regression from the Cincinnati Bengals, which we'll come on to. I like Lamar Jackson a lot. There's a lot of noise around him that I just don't like. Makes me uncomfortable. And I think it's wrong. There's a lot of, he doesn't throw enough, and you know what, blah de blah. And I think his offensive coordinator is Greg Roman. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's an issue. He's not exact. I would never call Greg, explosive or ingenuitive. Do you know what I mean? He's not someone who's going to pull out a magic box of tricks. It's not really, never, especially in the passing game. I think John Harbaugh's an excellent coach and has shown that over the years. I think Lamar's an excellent QB. I think what we need to think about now is, even in the Lamar sense, if we look just kind of off the top of your head in the AFC, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. I think I've named 7 quarterbacks there. There's only 7 playoff places. This is not going to be easy. Good quarterbacks will miss playoffs in the AFC based on this conversation. I don't expect it to be Baltimore, though. I expect them to be a playoff team this year. Let's find out, though. A team that is always a bit tricky when it comes to fantasy. Let's find out who Neil thinks their fancy darling is.
Hello, darling.
It's a bit hard not to look at the events of this off-season for the draft, free agency or whatnot, and not be excited about Rashad Bateman. As pretty much they've rolled out the red carpet for him. They sent Marquise Brown on his way to Arizona. They've made him the guy in the passing game. You say Mark Andrews, yeah, Andrews is going to get his, but, this is the downfield threat. This is he's going to lead the wide receivers. If he can develop a chemistry with Lamar Jackson, his current ADP makes him a bargain. Because I don't think this is someone who's going to finish the season in the top 12 in wide receivers, but he could certainly be a high-end wide receiver too, if he gets the volume and if he can be efficient. Because Marquise Brown was fairly inefficient and had 146 target last year. I know that's not going to happen. So we'll see how we go, but where he's going at the moment, I like it.
Let's find out who Neil doesn't like as much in Buy Everywhere.
I hate saying it because he's coming off the tight end 1, but I think if people are expecting Mark Andrews to repeat, they're going to be disappointed. As far as I'm concerned, the tight end hierarchy is still Travis Kelce because he has a bankable role and bankable volume. Behind him, the lead contenders, they all have significant question marks. And Mark Andrews he was exceptional in a season when Baltimore threw the piss out of the ball. they're not going to throw the piss out of the ball this year, and he has significant target competition in Rashad Bateman. Now, he's still going to be one of the leading tight ends because that's what he is. He is in there to catch the ball. They target him when he is on the field and running a route. They look for him in the red zone. They take deep shots to him. Not every single deep shot is going to come off. Not every single red zone target is going to result in a touchdown. It was perfect for him and his fancy production last year because everything fell apart around him. If we go for the blue sky scenario thinking, it can't possibly be that bad for them again on offense. So I'm not saying do not draft Mark Andrews. That would be stupid. I'm just saying look around, see what else is going on, and then make your decision to draft him or not.
Baltimore Ravens more likely to be discussed by draftniks in Week 18 in the Super Bowl or not at all, Neil?
I want to say Super Bowl because it's a well-run organisation. I say I so much time for the boy Harbaugh. I love watching Lamar Jackson, but I think they are in that between Week 18 and the Super Bowl because they are not blessed with playoff pedigree of success. They're not. And until to an extent, it's the same as Kirk Cousins. Until you show me you can do it, I'm going to doubt it. So they're in that middle space between 18 and Super Bowl. I don't think they win the Super Bowl. As you say, the AFC is an absolute murderer's row this year. But I do think they're in with a shout of winning the division, and so therefore will be in the playoffs.
There's a world where they win their division and they end up playing the Chargers or the Chiefs or the Broncos with Wilson or the Raiders or a Mac Jones Patriots, or you know what I mean. It's not going to be easy whatever game you get. I believe they'll have a home game. They have a really bizarre start of the season. Their first 4 weeks are Jets, Dolphins, Patriots, Bills. They play the whole of the AFC East in their first 4 games. They finish at Steelers, at Browns, Falcons, Steelers, at Bengals. Depending on what you think on Steelers and Browns, and we'll come to them, that could be a nice way to finish the season and get a bit of momentum up. In the Super Bowl conversation is interesting, right? If we are saying that really we should only say that for kind of 4 teams, then they're probably a Week 18 conversation. If we say there's 6 teams who we think can win the Super Bowl, then I believe Baltimore are one of them, and they are an in the Super Bowl conversation style team. UK people, those AFC East games are all 6 p.m. UK time, so we will see a lot of Lamar Jackson, who is my dynasty QB, so I'm hoping for big things early doors.
The good news about that is usually when they're on, it's either Iron Eagle or Kevin Harlan commentating on them, so that's good.
Which is a magic winner as well. Let's move on, Neil, to last year's Super Bowl runners-up, the Cincinnati Bengals. Biggest off-season headline. It's tough to pick one, but I could, I guess, pick appendicitis for their quarterback. I'm not going to. I'm concerned by contract news on franchise players, namely Jesse Bates, and what that means in the long-term ramifications of, let's be quite clear here, a cheap-ass franchise. The big question.
I ask the questions.
Can they show that last year wasn't a one-off?
That's the question. Because we've seen what happens when teams lose the Super Bowl. It's very hard to get back. It's very hard to bounce back and still be competitive. Especially when you lose the Super Bowl as late as they did. You know, it was down to the wire pretty much. The question regarding Jesse Bates is interesting because I think a lot of people, Jesse Bates he's one of those players that everyone always talks about when they say, oh, unsung heroes must be Jesse Bates. He wasn't great last year. He was good. Safety is one of those positions that the NFL seems to have decided they don't want to pay. And as you say, this is a cheap-ass franchise anyway. they're not going out on a hill. They're not going to go up and say, we'll break the market for safeties. They may do it they have done it in the past for quarterbacks. They've still got 2 very young, talented wide receivers who are going to want paying. They've shown in the past they'll pay them. They're not going to pay a safety top of the market money. The problem they've got is that Jesse Bates' only choices are he plays under the tag, or he doesn't play at all and turns up just in time to get a season told, or he sits out completely. Because even if he gets traded now, the team that acquires him cannot negotiate a long-term deal with him. So you're asking a team to give up significant draft capital for a player who potentially is on a 1-year rental. So I'm not blaming Bates here. I am blaming the Bengals. They've basically made this a it's up to you situation with Bates. And then they drafted his replacement anyway in the first round. So anyone who thinks the Eagles are going to be in for Bates, you're wrong. I just don't think Roseman's going to be prepared to give up their draft capital for a player he's going to have to wait to negotiate with down the line. Offensively, this team's very good. We know they have what I always like. They have the 3, the 3 genuine playmakers on offense. They have a great quarterback who I don't know what it is, but Joe Burrow has it. Their defense is very well coached without being loaded with superstars. I mean, you think back to the 2015 Bengals team, which was, an Andy Dalton injury away from pissing through the AFC. They had, Michael Johnson, Geno Atkins, people like that on the defense. They were superstars. Geno Atkins was a very, very underrated player. This team's defense, I don't think it has it. They've got good players. Troy Hendrickson, come over, has been a great signing in free agency from the Saints. It's a tough division. And to expect them to repeat, it's tough because, as I say, Super Bowl losers tend not to. The thing that I do like is that they are set up to at least increase their chances of doing well by saying, no, we will try and protect Joe Burrow. Anyone who listened to the Andrew Luck podcast, which we've spoken about, I think last week, the Colts either were unable or unwilling to commit significant resources to protecting Andrew Luck. The Bengals, in the past, have been of the opinion of, they'll sort it out themselves. But I think maybe they're thinking, actually, he could be special. He can't be special if he's on his back.
This team could be better and play better and have a worse record and not get to the Super Bowl. They were 10-7 and made it to the Super Bowl. I wouldn't say they were perfect. They started to catch lightning in a bottle with some scheme stuff and defense towards the later part of the year. And they won a playoff game when their quarterback was sacked 9 times. I think this team is going in the right direction. I think they're a very good team. I wouldn't be overly surprised if they didn't make the playoffs, however. And I don't think that means they're not good. We talk about the stacked AFC, and we then need to think that they are now playing a first place schedule, not a last place schedule. And that is, considerably different, right? And we'll come on to it a little bit later. But it's one of them where, I think Joe Burrow's elite, Jamar Chase, fantastic, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, excellent players. I'm not penciling them back into an AFC title game. Now, if they do get to another AFC title game, Joe Burrow maybe reaching that might not ever go against him ever again in that kind of situation. But a little bit regression to the mean in certain areas, and I think they will be good, not great. And I think people should be okay with that. I don't think anyone really thought they were ever going to make the Super Bowl at any point until they got to the Super Bowl. So, I think they're a team who will be a wild card playoff team. Let's find out who Neil loves, and there's a lot to love in the Cincinnati Bengals with his fancy darling.
Hello, darling.
If you want the staples of this team, you're going to have to pay for them. Burrow, Higgins, Chase, they're not going to be cheap. Mixon as well, not going to be cheap. So it's an offense that you think, I want a part of, I need a piece of it. Where can I find it with the best value? Well, for me, the best value, and again, this is a player who may have some standalone weekly value, especially if he can seize the passing down work, and it's Captain America himself, Chris Evans.
America's ass.
Yeah. Samaje Perine was put out there in a key moment of a Super Bowl. You can debate that all you want. All I know is it happened. I couldn't believe it, but it happened. Perine's nothing. He's shown nothing in the NFL. Chris Evans has been building up a drumbeat of support and enthusiasm among Bengals writers and reporters all off-season. Josh Norris, friend of the pod, excellent fancy analyst that he is, he likes what he sees in Chris Evans. He's going basically at the end of drafts, but you're getting a person there who you could plug into your flex or running back 3 spots, who could have weekly value, especially if they're getting into shootouts, because they've shown they're not going to pass the ball to Joe Mixon. We just need to accept it.
Let's find out who Neil isn't as big on in By Everywhere.
Tyler Boyd has been a wonderfully solid performer in the NFL, but the moment people, I think, are drafting him thinking, not hoping, but thinking that something might happen to Chase or Higgins and Boyd slides into a bigger workload. Yeah, it could happen. We've seen in the past, though, that Tyler Boyd is much better as a Robin and not a Batman. So I don't think it's safe to assume that he would instantly cannibalize all of Jamar Chase's work or all of T. Higgins' work. So, again, I say, if we are drafting fantasy players with the most positive outlook, then basically we have to say that Tyler Boyd is at best the 3rd option in this passing game, maybe the 4th, maybe even the 5th behind Hayden Hurst and Mixon or Evans or Perine passing the ball. So he's someone that I don't think you have to have, but have him on speed dial in case something does happen to them. But I don't think you need to be drafting him.
Cincinnati Bengals more likely to be discussed by draftniks in Week 18 in the Super Bowl or not at all?
I think Week 18. I think this is a playoff hunting team. As you said, I don't think they can get back to the Super Bowl. I'd be surprised if they did. I'd be surprised if they did it this year. As long as Joe Burrow continues to get healthier, because bear in mind he's going to be another year removed from the ACL, they've still got the wide receiver duo, which, you could say it's the best duo in the NFL. I think this team's going to score a lot of points. They're going to be a lot of fun, but they're still cheap-ass bastards who are going to scrimp and save in whatever way they can.
Yeah, I'm also going in Week 18. Week 2 at Dallas. Should be a big game. Should be one to watch. It's the CBS game at 9:25, so Tony Romo will be there. After the bye, they play the Chiefs, at the Bucks, at the Patriots on Christmas Eve. They play the Buffalo Bills and they play the Baltimore Ravens. They need to be ahead on the scorecard because that is a seriously tough run. So interesting team. I think they will make the playoffs. Week 18, they will be a wild card team. Next team, the Cleveland Browns. Biggest off-season headline. Well, if you don't know, I'm not telling you. The biggest question.
I ask the questions.
What should we expect from a Brissett-led offense?
The Browns sold their soul to the devil. I've no desire to talk about them.
Awesome. Are you going to give me a fancy darling go to buy everywhere?
Yeah.
Okay. I will talk briefly about them. Jacoby Brissett has become pulling case of emergency quarterback in a number of different spots. We talked briefly about the Andrew Luck thing. He was in that podcast and loved an F-bomb, which I found quite amusing. They will run a lot. They were going to run a lot anyway. I expect them to run even more. I'm not sure how Amari Cooper's going to feel about that. But anyway, Nick Chubb owners should be very happy. This team's got bad juju, and I don't expect them to be any good this year. They may be okay, but no, stay away. And let's be honest, after all of the kind of goodwill they've picked up over the past 20 years because they've been bad and people have been wanting them to be good, I believe they probably got lost all that in about half an hour. So bad news for them. Yeah, sell your soul for the devil and see what happens. Let's find out who Neil would be drafting as their fancy darling.
Hello, darling.
We talked last week when I gave you the top 10 tight ends. One of the players who I thought could emerge from the pack based on the play of the quarterback, the lack of serious target competition, is David Njoku. Njoku has teased us since he came into the NFL. I think 10% of his career receptions have gone for touchdowns. He's dominated in the red zone, and pretty much there's only really Amari Cooper for competition in this passing game. So whoever is at quarterback, he should see plenty of opportunity, and we know that he's an athletic freak, so he can rack up the yak, which, in a position where all we really want is one reception, 10 yards and a touchdown, you've got weekly fancy value. He's someone that I can see doing a lot of work underneath and in the red zone. So David Njoku may be something to smile about for this team.
Let's find out who should be buyer beware.
Whoever quarterbacks this team, one of them might not be available for a period of time. Hope it's a very long time. And the other one's Jacoby Brissett, which we know pretty much what we're going to get. As you say, he's going to hand the ball off an awful lot, pass when he has to, and when he does, it'll be to either Cooper or Njoku. So this isn't a position group that I need in my team, whether it's in regular redraft or Superflex. I just don't think it's worth it, because I don't think there's going to be any degree of certainty, because this is still a team that's being linked with potentially bringing in another veteran, even after signing Josh Rosen.
More likely to be discussed by draftniks in Week 18 or in the Super Bowl, or not at all. The Cleveland Browns, Neil, what are they?
On the field, I hope not at all, but I suspect off the field it'll be talked about a great deal.
The first 4 weeks are at the Panthers versus the Jets versus the Steelers and at Atlanta. I think all four of those teams aren't very good. They could possibly be 4-0. Don't worry though, they then play the Chargers, the Patriots, at the Ravens and the Bengals, so it won't last necessarily for long. I think they're a not at all team. I think that's fair. I think they are a 6 to 8 win team. They could have been better, but they decided they wanted their quarterback to play for the Carolina Panthers. So, and let's be honest, if you're not cheering for Baker Mayfield in that Carolina uniform on week 1, you're not doing it right. Final team in the AFC North is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The biggest off-season headline was we finally said goodbye to Ben Roethlisberger. The big question:
I ask the questions.
is this the year that the Steelers start to hit rock bottom?
I may have missed a few things, but is Mike Tomlin still head coach?
He is still head coach.
9-8. Mike Tomlin doesn't do losing records. And you look at some of the teams he has coaxed a 500 performance out of. I mean, he got to 8 wins with a combination of Mason Rudolph and something called Duck Hodges at quarterback. He got them the number 1 seed with the rotting corpse of Ben Roethlisberger. He got them there last year with the rotting corpse, dismembered, dug up again, Ben Roethlisberger. This team is going to be very good on defense. The offense is going to be interesting because we're finally, for the first time in at least 15 years, going to see a Steelers offense that's run by the offensive coordinator and not the whims of the quarterback. So we're going to see what that is. We're going to see how creative they can be. It doesn't mean they're going to be very good. I think they have something of, not the choice you really want between Mitch Trubisky, who got better by not playing, and a rookie that that the NFL told us what they think of, by letting him drop 20 spots in a quarterback dry draft. So I don't think this is going to be a good team, but I think they'll do what they do and they'll win enough games to stay out of being in a position to draft early.
Do you believe that Mitchell Trubisky or Kenny Pickett will start week 1?
The Steelers are still quite an old school team in a lot of the ways of thinking, and I think one of the biggest ones of that is rookies shouldn't necessarily start, especially rookies that there are significant question marks about. They've not made a serious, significant long-term commitment to Mitchell Trubisky from a financial point of view, but they've made enough of a one. So I think given his track record in the NFL, they're going to give him the chance to fail first. And then if the season's gone or they need a spark, then they'll turn to Pickett. But I believe the week 1 start will be Mitchell Trubisky.
The Pittsburgh Steelers fall slap bang into what I'm going to call this season the New Orleans Saints zone for me. I have absolutely no clue about this team whatsoever. If someone said to me this team... Well, I do not believe this team will win 12 games. But anything below that all the way down to 3, I could see someone saying they have an excellent defense still. They have Mike Tomlin. As you said, they may actually be able to run an offense for the first time in a long time. But I'm not sure they're very good. I don't expect them to be good. And I could argue that they could come fourth in the division based on that, and then you look at Tomlin like maybe not. And yeah, I don't know. Do they? They usually play really well against good teams and really badly against bad teams. But if you're now not as good as you used to be, what does a good team constitute? A team that's better than you? That could be good for them. But it's a bizarre situation. I have, again, as I said with the Saints last week, I have no feel for this team whatsoever. I have no understanding of whether they're going to be good or not. And I have a feeling that their byes week 9, I still may not know if they're any good or not by week 9. Let's find out who Neil likes fancy-wise with the fancy darling.
Hello, darling.
One thing this team does as well as anyone in the NFL is draft wide receivers. So we may not know for certain who's going to be throwing them the ball the bulk of the season. But where George Pickens is going, and the type of player that Pickens is, the personality type, I think, what's this new phrase? He's got the dog in him. This man is he's a dog. He's got it. Yeah. I think they've allowed rookie wide receivers to play. They just don't like them in any other positions. So I think where he's going, he represents excellent value. Deontay Johnson has shown that he could be a target magnet for Ben Roethlisberger. We don't know if he's going to, this chemistry he's going to get to develop with Trubisky or Kenny Pickett. Johnson's not a bad player, but I think the Steelers have made their feelings about him clear by the fact that they've not extended him, and they very rarely do extend their wide receivers. It's only really, the very special ones. So I think we'll see Pickens maybe start slow, but work his way into the rotation towards the mid part of the season and towards the end, to where he's putting up solid wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2 numbers.
That's who Neil likes. Let's find out who he doesn't with buyer beware.
Najee Harris is a worry because he's going to get plenty of volume, but this isn't going to be a very good offense. But the person that I really can't talk myself into is Chase Claypool. I mean, the fact that they got him to read out the name of the player that ostensibly is going to replace him in the offense is never a good sign. Claypool scored 11 touchdowns, a rookie. Very good. 4 of them in the same game. So I know this isn't a take out his contract games and he's shit. I know that's not good. But I just think that he plays smaller than his significant physical gifts allow him to. Still can't get over the signalling for a first down when you're in the hurry up. I know it's one of those. You hope that was a growing moment for him, and he's moved past it. It didn't sit right with me. The old man shouting at cloud that I am. Didn't like it, and I just don't think this team is going to want to prop up multiple pass catchers, considering they're going to want to run the ball with Najee Harris and then look to be efficient with the receivers they have. So that's good news for, say, Johnson, Pat Frymouth, and Pickens. But I don't think it's good news for Claypool, who's a bit more of a boom-bust, highly volatile player.
Pittsburgh Steelers more likely to be discussed by draftniks in Week 18 in the Super Bowl, or not at all, Neil?
Well, I've said they're a 9-8 team. Now, 9-8 in the NFC probably gets you the first seed, but in the AFC, there's a very good chance that 9 wins isn't enough to get you into the playoffs. So I think it's going to be a postseason off for the Steelers. But I don't think they're going to be terrible. But again, I think they're going to be just good enough to not embarrass themselves. But Mike Tomlin doesn't do losing seasons. So as much as I respect John Harbaugh, I respect Mike Tomlin as well, especially as we look back in his career and think about all the shit he's had to put up with. I think he gets enough out of his players to make them competitive. But as you say, they'll play up to some opponents, they'll play down to others, and that'll bite them on the arse this season.
I'm going to say not at all. Week 5 through 8, pre-bye, at Buffalo versus the Bucks, at the Dolphins, at the Eagles. Yummy. That's not pretty.
They don't win in Philadelphia either. The Steelers never do.
I'm going to take your word for it. You're the aficionado on such things. They will win games, but at best they're the third best team in this division. Probably the worst. That I'm toss up, I guess. I see them as a not at all team. They will be well coached and they will win games that they shouldn't, but they will lose games because they are less talented than the other teams. That's it for the AFC North, Neil. I think we agree on Baltimore and Cincinnati as the first two, and the other two toss up both. I think you go Steelers Browns. I may go Browns Steelers. Yeah,
I think I'll go Steelers Browns, but if it was the other way round, I'm not shedding any tears.
Yeah, I think this is a competitive. I think we both agree this is a competitive division. We don't expect a bottom feeder here. We don't expect the draftnik team. We haven't highlighted one. I think playing the NFC South and the AFC East may help them for that, because they will probably win games against those teams.
We know that whenever the Steelers play the Ravens, the winner wins 13-10. This has happened for
16-14, such close scores.
And it'll piss down, and if the Ravens, whoever's in their white jerseys, they're going to be absolutely caked in mud. This division has always kicked the living piss out of itself, and I don't see that changing so much this year. That's why it wouldn't surprise me if some of the wins that the Steelers have are against teams in this division, where you look at it and think, how did they win that? I mean, bear in mind, the Steelers beat the Bills last year. We forget that. Week 1, the Steelers beat the Bills. That was probably one of the games that cost the Bills, other than the Jacksonville game. So they can do daft things, but this division likes nothing better than taking itself out to the tool shed.
Absolutely. Neil, that's it for this week. AFC North done and dusted. Next time you listen to us, we'll be doing the NFC North, which means we get to talk about everybody's favourite Wiccan, Nick Cage looking mofo, Aaron Rodgers. I for one cannot wait. Neil, before we get to that pleasure, where can people catch you?
Find me on the Twitter at @NDutton13. I have a piece out this week for Numberfire. Not Numberfire, sorry. I will have a piece out for Numberfire now, as I think I've just talked myself into it. A piece of Rotoviz on my 3 favourite late round tight ends to target, and also check my piece out on Roto Underworld for formation adjusted yards per route run, as I explain what the hell that metric is and who's good at it.
That is a stat for the ages, that, Neil. I'm at Mindy7, combined with at waxing_lyrical. No show next week because I'm in Turkey.
Quitter,
melting in 40-degree heat. Cannot wait. As a ginger, perfectly designed for such conditions. But the These are the things you've got to do. You've got to get yourself ready and prepared for the season, Neil, and sometimes that means you've got to take a little bit of a break, and I'm going to do that. So we'll see you on the other side. These top guys are out.